Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an analysis of the Hindu newspaper from UPSC perspective. Today we will discuss the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 28th April 2020. And the articles that we will discuss today are displayed on your screen. So let us start our discussion. Now, in this article on page number 6, the author has tried to highlight the economic fallout of the COVID 19 outbreak and how it is going to change the geopolitics and the geoeconomics of the world. So, in this article, we will look at the issues which have been highlighted regarding the functioning of important international institutions. Also, we'll look at how this economic shock due to the coronavirus outbreak is likely to increase the power of the state, and also how is the geopolitics changing because of this corona outbreak. So in this slide we will look at the increasing influence of China and how is the West faltering and how its influence is decreasing in the global world order. And also how is this outbreak going to impact the West Asian region, and also we'll look at the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak on the Western Asian region, and also we'll look at how is it going to impact India's influence in the region. So this becomes a very important topic for us from General Studies paper 2 under the topic International Relations. Now, regarding the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak on the international institutions, the author says that it has adversely impacted the image of the existing international institutions, and especially fingers have been raised against the working of the UN Security Council and the World Health Organization. In this regard, regarding the UN Security Council, the author says that it has failed to act on a situation which is far graver than a war. So normally the UN Security Council is expected to work in the scenario of an outbreak of war. However, the author says that this situation is far more grave as compared to a war, and as such, the UN Security Council must have acted decisively. Further, regarding the World Health Organization, you might have gone through various articles in the DNS that its credibility has been at the stake, and that is mainly because it has been charged with a bias towards China, and also it has been accused of not warning the nations timely. And because of the alleged biasness of the WHO towards China, the United States of America has stopped the funding of the World Health Organization. So all these instances have highlighted the issues in the functioning of these international institutions during the coronavirus outbreak. Further, after highlighting the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak on the international institutions, the author has highlighted the economic impact and how it is going to make the state or the governments powerful across the world. So in this line, the author says that the World Bank has already predicted a negative growth rate for most of the nations, and India's growth forecast for the current fiscal year has been put at about 1.5 to 2.8% only. Now, in such a scenario, as the economies are faltering across the globe, the state is going to be one of the most powerful institutions of providing the public good. And in such a scenario, its power is likely to become unrestrained, and people are likely to surrender their liberties in the favor of greater state control. And as such, the post COVID 19 world may have to pay a heavy price in terms of loss of liberty, because the state is going to become more powerful as people are going to surrender their liberties. And this is because the citizens are going to surrender their liberties in favor of the greater state control so that it can fight the impact of the COVID 19 outbreak. And as the state becomes more powerful and people surrender their liberties, it is not a very good sign for democracies across the world, and it could lead to authoritarian governments across the countries. Further, the author analyzes the impact of COVID-19 outbreak on the geoeconomics and the geopolitics. So in this line, it has been highlighted that the influence of China is going to further increase in the aftermath of the COVID-19 outbreak. And this is mainly because China is presently seeking to take the advantage and benefit from the problems which are being faced by the rest of the world in the wake of the epidemic. Also, it is already the world's largest supplier of manufactured goods, and it is likely to take benefit from its early recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Further, it aims to seek geopolitical advantage by offering medical aid and other assistance to several Asian and African countries to meet their current pandemic threat. And this is how it is likely to increase its influence in the Asian and the African countries by providing the medical aid and assistance. Also, China is pursuing a policy of exploiting the vulnerability of the financial institutions of other countries. And there have been instances where it has acquired the financial assets and stakes in the banks and companies across the world by taking the advantage of the scaled down values of their assets. Now, we already know that China has acquired 1% stake in the HDFC Bank in India following the decreasing value of the assets of HDFC Bank. And as a response to this, India has imposed the FDI restrictions. Now, other countries like the Australia and Germany have also begun to restrict the Chinese foreign direct investment in companies and financial institutions in their countries. And these countries are doing this after recognizing the inherent danger of a possible Chinese hostile takeover of their critical financial assets. However, the author says that such responses will not be able to check the growing Chinese influence. And this is because it is likely to influence the Asian nations, the Southeast Asian nations, and also Australia and New Zealand because it is one of the most powerful members in the RCEP or the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Further, its influence is likely to increase because of the Belt Road Initiative and the economic control it will have on the nations which are participating in this Belt Road Initiative. So, in this background regarding the increasing influence of China, the author predicts that China is probably preparing for a China-centric multilateral globalization framework. So, all these instances highlight that China is pursuing a policy which will lead to its increasing influence in the Asian, Southeast Asian region, and also its influence is likely to increase in the geopolitics and the geoeconomics of the world. Further, in the post-COVID world, the author predicts that the influence of Western countries is likely to decrease globally. And this is because the United States of America will be weakened economically and politically after the COVID-19. And its capacity to play a critical role in the world affairs is likely to diminish. And further, the influence of European Union is decreasing because of the economic problems that are being faced by it. Further, the influence of United Kingdom is also likely to decrease because of Brexit from the European Union. So overall, the author predicts that the influence of China is going to increase and the influence of the Western world, which includes the United States of America and the Europe, is likely to decrease in the post-COVID-19 world. Now, regarding the influence of West Asia and India, the author says that in the West Asian region, the influence of Iran and Saudi Arabia is going to take a hit. And this is because of the crashing crude oil prices, which will adversely impact the economies of Iran and Saudi Arabia. Now, a consequence of the decreasing influence of Iran and Saudi Arabia in the Western Asian region is that it will lead to increasing influence of Israel in the region. So overall, the dynamics of the West Asian region is going to change after the COVID-19 world because of the crashing crude oil prices. Now, regarding India's position in the post-COVID world, the author says that India will face a difficult situation because of the ongoing economic meltdown. And in such a scenario, it will not be able to counter the Chinese influence, which is winning new friends and contacts across the region because it is furthering the economic help to the countries which are impacted because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So India will not be able to counter the assistance or the economic assistance which is being provided by the China to the countries which are impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic because India is already facing a difficult economic situation because of the economic meltdown. Further, India's leverage in the West Asia is also going to reduce because of the adverse impact of falling crude oil prices on the Indian expatriate community in the region. And we note that the Indian expatriate community is known for sending the highest amount of remittances to the country, which is important for its foreign exchange position or the balance of payment position. So regarding the global geopolitics and geoeconomics, the author has highlighted that the credibility of the existing international institutions like the UN Security Council and the World Health Organization has decreased. And also, the state is going to become more powerful, and the liberties of the citizens are going to be restricted in the post COVID world. Further, the influence of China is going to increase and the influence of Western countries is going to decrease. Also, in the West Asian region, the influence of already existing big players like Iran and Saudi Arabia is going to decrease, and at the same time, it will give the opportunity to Israel to increase its influence in the region. And regarding India's position, the author says that India is not likely to influence the geopolitics because of the difficult economic situation it is facing because of the economic meltdown. And as such, it will not be able to counter the increasing or growing Chinese influence, which is furthering economic assistance to the countries which are facing economic troubles because of the COVID-19 outbreak. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 1 is related to RBI's approval of opening rupees 50,000 crore liquidity for the mutual funds. Now, recently, Franklin Templeton Mutual Fund decided to close its 6 mutual fund schemes. And all these mutual funds belong to a category of mutual funds which are known as the credit risk mutual funds. And the combined assets of these funds was over rupees 28,000 crore, and such a decision of closing 6 mutual fund schemes jolted the entire mutual fund industry, and experts have pointed out that it may have significant impact on the entire financial sector of India. So in this background, the RBI has recently decided to open a special liquidity facility for mutual funds which is known as the SLFMF, which amounts to about rupees 50,000 crore. Now, this can be important for us from the General Studies paper 3 point of view under the topic economic development. And some of the points that we will discuss here can also be important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. So, in this background, let us understand the working of mutual fund companies and also what's the present crisis in the Franklin Templeton, and also how this crisis in the Franklin Templeton Mutual Fund has been aggravated because of the impact of COVID-19. And further, how can the mutual funds avail the RBI's special liquidity facility for mutual funds or the SLFMF. Now, regarding the mutual fund companies, you might already be knowing that these are those companies which pool in money from the investors, and then they invest this money in different financial instruments like the shares, bonds, debentures, etc. And the profits that are earned from such investments are distributed among the investors. And for this service, the mutual fund companies charge the management fee from the investors for managing their portfolio. So simply, even in this Franklin Templeton crisis, investors kept on investing in the mutual funds which were being offered by the Franklin Templeton. Now, issue is that Franklin Templeton used to invest in a category of mutual funds which are known as credit risk funds. Now, such mutual funds are named as credit risk funds because in such kind of mutual funds, there is high rate of expected return on such mutual funds. However, these high return rates are also associated with high risk. That is, there are chances that these mutual funds might not fetch any high rate of return. So the risk that is involved in investing such kind of financial instruments is more as compared to other or simpler financial instruments. Now, the risk is so high in the credit risk funds because the investment is done in those bonds and commercial papers which are rated AA and below, which means that the rating of such funds is not very good. So, although the return on such investments can be expected to be more, however, associated with these high returns is greater risk of losses. So, this is the risk that the investors take by investing in such kinds of mutual funds. And Franklin Templeton offered 6 such kind of mutual fund schemes which it has recently closed. So after this, let us look at what was the impact of COVID-19 which has led Franklin Templeton to close or shut down these 6 mutual fund schemes which are credit risk funds. Now, normally what happens is that once an investor has invested in the credit risk funds, he can pull out that money at any point of time, which means that there is no lock-in period on such kinds of investments. Now, because of the COVID-19 crisis and the consequent economic crisis, there was panic among the investors. and they tried to redeem their money which they had invested in these credit risk funds. Now, normally what happens is that there is enough amount of liquidity in the market, and as such, these mutual fund companies simply return the amount which has been asked by the investors when they are redeeming their mutual funds. Now, why was there a shortage of liquidity in the market? So, as the Franklin Templeton had invested in some companies or in the shares or the bonds of some companies, these companies were unable to service their bond and commercial papers because of closure of economic activity, which was a consequence of the COVID-19 outbreak. So, as these companies were not earning profits because of the closure of the business, they were unable to service the bond and the commercial paper obligations. And as such, the companies like Franklin Templeton were not able to return the money to the investors. And as such, they were forced to close these 6 mutual fund schemes. So, after understanding the reasons for the shortage of liquidity in the market and how these mutual fund companies were unable to pay to their investors, let us understand what is this proposed liquidity scheme of the Reserve Bank of India. So, in this background, the RBI has floated special liquidity facility for mutual funds, which is known as the SLF-MF, and it aims at about rupees 50,000 crore liquidity in the mutual fund market. Now, how this liquidity will be provided? So, what will happen is that banks will borrow this money from the Reserve Bank of India simply through the repo route, and the time or the maturity period for these repos will be 90 days, and the interest rate at which the banks can borrow from the Reserve Bank of India will also be at the repo rate. And further, this liquidity which has been borrowed by the banks can be provided to the mutual fund companies in 3 ways. First is through the direct loans to the mutual fund companies. Second is through the outright purchase of the investment grade bonds, debentures and commercial papers which are being held by these mutual fund companies. So all those mutual funds which were floated by these companies will now be purchased by the banks which have borrowed the liquidity from the Reserve Bank of India. And as such, the mutual funds will be able to repay to their investors. Now, as the banks are borrowing through the repo route from the Reserve Bank of India, so similarly, the mutual fund companies can also borrow money from the banks through the repo route. So this means that these mutual funds will sell the securities to the banks, and in return they will get some money. However, these mutual funds will have to repurchase those securities again from the banks after the maturity period ends. So these are the 3 routes through which the mutual funds can raise liquidity by which they can repay to their investors. And this step of RBI has been taken in order to check the issue of liquidity to the mutual fund companies. And if this liquidity was not provided to the mutual fund companies, it could have led to a cascading effect on the other financial instruments and would have led to the collapse of the financial sector altogether. So these are few very important points related to the special liquidity facility which has been provided by the Reserve Bank of India for the mutual funds. So in this, the important point that should be noted is that this liquidity will be routed through the banks, and in this, the banks will borrow the money through the repo route. So these are few important facts that need to be kept in mind. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 6 highlights that there is going to be reorientation of the world order after the COVID-19 crisis is over. And in that scenario, India needs to work on 2 fronts. That is, it needs to address the challenges that it faces in the domestic sphere, and also it needs to actively play a part in the international efforts to help the world recover from this crisis. And in the previous article, we have already seen that how the global world order and the geopolitics and geoeconomics are going to change after the COVID-19 crisis is over. So in this scenario, the author highlights what are the important issues that India face in the domestic sphere, and also the author has provided certain recommendations for the government to come out of these issues in the domestic sphere. And also the author highlights India's role at the global stage and why India needs to take a leadership role in the international efforts towards important issues of the world. So let us look at all the points that have been highlighted by the author in this regard. And this can be important for us from the General Studies Paper 2 point of view under the topic International Relations, and also under the issues related to social justice. Now, some of the issues that India faces in its domestic sphere include the issue of inequality, underinvestments in social security, and the lack of quality of administration. Now, we already know that the COVID COVID-19 outbreak and the consequent lockdown has highlighted the issue of socio-economic inequality that is present in India. And it has clearly highlighted that it is the poor and the labor class which is at the receiving end in the times of economic crisis. And the vulnerability of the poor and the labor class is visible in the loss of livelihood, lack of clean and hygienic habitation, lack of access to quality healthcare, and the overall lack of social security net for this class of citizens. Further, regarding the underinvestments in the social security, we note that because of the lockdown and the economic consequences, the poor and the labor class have been badly impacted. And this shows that there is underinvestment in the social security because otherwise these sections would not have suffered this much. Further, we note that there is lack of quality of administration, and this is visible in the way the administration has handled the issue of migrant laborers during the lockdown. Further, the lack of quality administration has been visible in the distribution of economic relief. And we note that the economic relief which has been announced by the government has not been able to reach each and every poor and the vulnerable person. And those migrant laborers who are locked up in the urban areas and are working outside their home states have not been able to receive the benefits which have been announced by their home state governments. And as the migrant laborers have not been able to return to their home states, the benefits under the Manrega wages which have been announced have not been able to reach those migrant laborers who are stuck in the urban areas outside their states. So these highlight the issue of lack of quality administration. Now, what needs to be done in such a scenario? So the author highlights that there is a need for comprehensive roadmap to deal with the health and the economic consequence of the crisis, and that has to be clearly laid out by the government. Further, the government should scale up investment in the universal healthcare, education, and social security. And this should be done by planning for alternative source of funding for providing the social security net to the poorest sections of the society. And also, the government needs to focus on or move beyond the welfare measures and provide opportunities for a radical socio-economic transformation. Further, the author has suggested that India should take a leadership role at the global stage. And in this line, the author highlights that India is one of the pharmaceutical hubs of the world. And in this line, India should scale up the supply of medicines like the hydrochloroquine, which India has recently increased the supply to other countries. Also, India should take a leadership role in the international efforts towards the vaccine development and production. Now, we note that India has already been doing this with the Serum Institute of India has recently announced the production of a vaccine in collaboration with the Oxford University. And the clinical trials for this vaccine are still pending. Further, India has also contributed to the genome sequencing efforts of the GISED, which is a global public-private partnership which shares influenza-related data. And this will also help in the development of new generation vaccines like the mRNA vaccine, which uses the recent developments in biotechnology. Now, regarding the mRNA vaccine, you might have already studied in a previous DNS video where the various stages of development of the vaccines of COVID-19 have been discussed. So in conclusion, the author says that India is home to about 1/6 of the global population. So it is important that we form an integral part of any world order that emerges. However, for India to play a leadership role, we need to prioritize resolving the domestic fault lines before we plan to strategize our role in the emerging world order. So India needs to balance its efforts towards improving the domestic situation, and also it needs to play a leadership role at the global stage. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 6 highlights the issue of Supreme Court judgment on using video conferencing for the proceedings of the Supreme Court. Now, in this regard, we note that due to the lockdown, it has made difficult for the litigants to approach the court, and this has hampered their access to justice. So in this context, a 3-judge bench headed by the Chief Justice of India has suggested new rule to hold virtual proceedings without the physical presence of lawyers and the litigants. However, this move of the Supreme Court has not been supported by the members of Supreme Court Bar Association, and they fear that this might set a new precedent in the times to come. And they have contended that such measures like holding of virtual proceedings should only be used during the times of crisis. Now, some of these aspects can be important for us under the General Studies Paper 2 under the topic Polity. Now, in this regard, the Supreme Court has provided certain guidelines which make sure that the practice of social distancing is followed in the court proceedings. Further, the Supreme Court has provided the judgment for the use of video conferencing for the proceedings. And in this regard, the Supreme Court's Bar Association is not happy with the decision of Supreme Court of holding virtual proceedings, and they have made certain requests to the Supreme Court. However, all these issues are not very important. However, they have been included in today's PDF. Now, what is important is the e-Court Mission Mode project, which was started by the Government of India under its National E-Governance Program. And also, what are the important articles of the Constitution which provide power of Supreme Court and High Court to make the rules of their proceedings. So we will look at both these important aspects for us from the preliminary examination point of view. Now, regarding the e-Court Mission Mode project, the e-Court Mission Mode project was started in its phase 1 between the period 2010 to 2015, and the second phase of this project was between 2015 to 2019. Now, it is a part of the National E-Governance Project for information communication technology enablement of district and subordinate courts of the country. And some of the major objectives of the project include to make the whole judicial system information communication technology enabled. And it also aims at electronic movements of the records from the taluka or the trial to the appeal courts. And it also aims at installation of video conferencing facility and recording of witnesses through the video conferencing. Now, these are few projects of the e-Court Mission Mode project, and in this regard, the Supreme Court has given a judgment in which they have called for virtual proceedings of the Supreme Court. Now, in this regard, it is important for us to know about the power of the Supreme Court and High Court to make rules and what are the articles in the Indian Constitution related to that. And these can be very important aspects for us from the preliminary examination point of view. So, according to the Article 145, subject to the provisions of any law made by the Parliament, the Supreme Court may, with the approval of the President, make the rules for regulating generally the practice and the procedure of the court. So in this regard, the Supreme Court has been provided with the power, although with the approval of the President, to make the rules for regulating the practice and procedure of the court. And in this regard, this decision of the Supreme Court has been given on the basis of this Article 145. Further, according to the Article 225, subject to the provisions of the Constitution and to the provisions of any law of the appropriate legislatures made by the virtue of powers conferred on that legislature by this Constitution, the High Court has the power to make rules and regulate the sittings of the court. So again, powers have been provided to the High Courts to make their rules and regulate the proceedings, and these have been provided under the Article 225. Now, besides this, the Article 227 provides power of superintendence over all the courts by the High Courts in the particular states. And in this regard, every High Court shall have superintendence over all the courts and tribunals throughout the territories in relation to which it exercises its jurisdiction. So, all the courts and tribunals which are functioning within the territorial jurisdiction of a High Court, they are subjected to the superintendence of the High Court of that state. So these are few very important articles for us from the preliminary examination point of view, which provide the Supreme Court and High Court to make their own rules of proceeding. And also, the Article 227 provides the power of superintendence over all the courts by the High Court in its jurisdiction. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 8 deals with the report which has highlighted that India is amongst the top 3 military spenders. And this can be an important aspect for us from the preliminary examination point of view. And if you look at the previous year questions, you will find that in the year 2018, a question was asked related to the Rule of Law Index. And the question was related to the agency which releases this Rule of Law Index. So it was released by the World Justice Project. So similarly, let us look at which organization or body releases this index related to the military spending. And also let us look at the key takeaways of this report regarding the military expenditure. So now the first point that is important for us is that this report by the name Trends in the World Military Expenditure is released by an organization known as SIPRI, and it stands for Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Now this institute is dedicated to research into the conflict, armaments, arms control and disarmament. Further, this report is related to military expenditure, which refers to all the government spendings on the current military forces and activities. So, this means that it not only refers to the arms spending but also refers to arms spending plus the other military expenditures related to military constructions, research and development, and also related to the salaries and expenditures on the armed personnel. Now, what are the key takeaways of this Trends in World Military Expenditure report? So, it highlights that the global military expenditure has risen to dollar 1,917 billion in the year 2019. And the top three spenders include the United States of America, China, and India. And in this regard, United States of America's spending was about dollar 732 billion, and the China's expenditure was about dollar 261 billion. However, India, which stands at the third place, had its military expenditure of about dollar 71 billion. And the military spending by the United States of America has grown by 5.3%, and it has accounted for 38% of the global military spending. So these are few trends highlighted by the World Military Expenditure Report, which has been released by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Now, what is important for us is the institute which releases this report, and that can be an important aspect for us from the preliminary examination point of view. So with this, we conclude today's discussion. Now let's take up the question for the day.